Salt air chill, 20 years gone by. Sunset bleeds in a mocking sky. Empty swings in a silent frame. One move slow.
The salt air, thick with the scent of brine and memory, clung to Mark's lungs like a shroud. 20 years. 2 decades. 7,305 days, each one marked by the absence of laughter, the hollowness of a stolen future. 20 years since the ocean, that restless gray beast, had clawed away a piece of his soul, leaving a gaping wound that stubbornly refused to heal, festering with regret and what-ifs. He stood on the weathered deck of the beach house, the salt-eaten pine groaning softly under his weight. This very deck, he'd built it himself, cedar planks smooth beneath his calloused hands now, but back then, raw and fragrant. Finn had been beside him, a whirlwind of 8-year-old energy, chattering excitedly about pirates and buried treasure, his small hands mimicking hammering motions with childish glee. Now, only the restless gray expanse of the ocean met his gaze. The sunset bled across the sky, not with gentle hues, but a violent, beautiful orange, mirroring the life that had been so violently extinguished on these very shores. In the yard, the swing set stood sentinel, a monument to loss stark against the fading light. One swing, his swing, swayed gently in the evening breeze, a ghostly rhythm like a mournful metronome marking the passage of time. The other, Finn's swing, hung still, cracked leather, whispering of sun and time, of countless summer days filled with soaring laughter. A silent testament to a joy that was no more, a vibrant melody silenced too soon. Inside the house, soft sounds drifted out, the clinking of ceramic mugs, the low whir of the coffee grinder, the gentle hiss of the kettle on the stove. David moved with the quiet grace of a man accustomed to carrying a heavy, invisible burden, preparing their annual ritual. Coffee, strong, black, and bitter, mirroring the taste of their grief. Words were sparse these days, especially on this date. The silence, however, was deafening. A thick, oppressive silence, filled with the phantom echoes of Finn's bright, inquisitive voice, his boundless energy. Mark's gaze remained fixed on the motionless swing. He closed his eyes, seeking solace in the darkness, but finding only sharper images of the past. The years peeled away, layer by agonizing layer. He could see Finn. Small and sun-kissed, his eyes the bright blue of a summer sky, his hair wheat blonde streaked with gold, a constellation of freckles scattered across his nose and cheeks. Legs pumping furiously, face alight with unrestrained joy as he soared through the air, a giggle escaping his lips with each upward swing. The laughter, so clear, so vibrant, a series of bright, ringing sounds echoed in his mind, a phantom sound that was both a comfort and an unbearable torment. His hand clenched the weathered railing, knuckles white against the gray wood. Guilt, a constant, corrosive companion, tightened its icy grip around his heart, squeezing the air from his lungs. If only, the words were a relentless tide, eroding the shores of his sanity. Wave after wave of regret crashing against the fragile remnants of his peace. If only he'd checked the weather forecast more diligently that morning. If only he had bought Finn that ridiculous plastic pirate sword he'd begged for, distracting him, perhaps, from wanting to explore the treacherous rocks. If only he had simply said no to going to the beach that day, choosing the safe predictability of home. If only he'd been faster, stronger, better, a superhero dad who could have defied the unforgiving ocean. The what-ifs were a legion, a torment of might-have-beens that haunted every waking moment and bled into the dark, restless landscape of his dreams, tightening his chest, making each breath a conscious, painful effort. The sliding glass door whispered open. David emerged, 2 steaming mugs cradled carefully in his hands. His limp, a permanent reminder of that fractured day, was more pronounced today, each step a subtle ache in Mark's own heart. Silver threaded starkly through his once dark hair, and the lines etched deep on his face mirrored the intricate, painful map of sorrow Mark carried within his soul. He offered a mug, the ceramic warm against Mark's cold fingers, their fingers brushing in a silent, familiar communion. A touch that spoke volumes, a shared language of loss, forged in the crucible of unspeakable tragedy. Dace low, raspy, thick with unshed tears. Finn's name hung unspoken between them, unnecessary, as palpable as the salt air they breathed. They both knew. 28 years since Finn was born, 20 years since he was taken. Mark nodded, the lump in his throat a painful, physical obstruction. He turned back to the ocean, the rhythmic sighing of the tide now morphing in his mind into a mournful groan. The waves crashed against the jagged rocks that jutted out from the shore, the very rocks that had ripped Finn from their lives. Sharp, unforgiving teeth of the sea. The sunset's vibrant beauty was lost on him. All he saw was the churning white foam, the unforgiving gray stone beneath, the terrifying swallowing darkness that had claimed his son whole. Then it happened. Subtle sound of crackling electricity. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. More a shimmer, a subtle distortion in the air, like heat rising off sun-baked asphalt blurring the edges of reality. One moment, he was staring at the ocean, drowning in the familiar, suffocating tide of grief. The next, the air around him seemed to crackle with unseen energy, the scent of salt intensifying, becoming almost overpowering, and the colors of the sunset. They seemed to deepen, to vibrate with an unnatural intensity, almost painful to look at. He blinked once, twice, trying to clear his vision, but the distortion remained, and with the third blink, the world shifted. The air was thick now, not with brine, but with the sharp artificial scent of sunscreen and the warm, comforting smell of hot sand. The swing set was still there, but different. Both swings motionless, newer, the wood brighter, the chains gleaming. But the colors, they were different too, softer somehow, muted, less harsh. And the light, strangely sharper, almost blindingly bright, as if the sun itself had intensified. He looked down at his hands. They were different, younger. No, not younger exactly, but less worn, the lines fainter, a familiar scar on his wrist, gone. He felt a tremor of disorientation, a dizzying lurch in his stomach, a wave of nausea rising in his throat. Bright children. Then, laughter. High, clear, utterly impossibly. Finn's laughter. Laughter becomes more distinct. It was coming from the beach, carried on the warm, dry breeze. He turned, heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic, desperate bird trapped in a cage, hope and disbelief warring within him. And there he was. Finn, smaller, younger, impossibly, breathtakingly alive. He was kneeling in the sand, brow furrowed in childish concentration, his tongue peeking out from the corner of his mouth, meticulously building a sandcastle. He wore a bright, cartoonish swimsuit and a faded baseball cap perched jauntily on his head, sand clinging to his knees and elbows. David was there too, younger as well, his limp barely noticeable, kneeling beside Finn, offering gentle guidance, pointing to a crumbling section of the sandcastle with a relaxed smile. They were laughing, father and son, bathed in the golden, unfiltered light of a sun that hadn't yet set on their world, a world where Finn was still breathing, still laughing, still his. Disbelief warred with a surging, overwhelming hope that threatened to drown him, to sweep him away in its powerful current. This couldn't be real. It had to be a cruel hallucination, a trick of his grief-addled mind. But it felt real. The warmth of the sun scorching his skin, the grit of sand cool beneath his bare feet, the sound of Finn's laughter so close, so vibrant, it was all achingly, vividly, undeniably real. He took a hesitant step forward, the sand yielding beneath his weight, then another, each step a prayer and a disbelief. Voice a hoarse whisper. Finn? Finn's laughter stops, sound of digging in sand cease. Finn looked up, his bright blue eyes widening in surprise, focusing on Mark with innocent confusion. Dad! He scrambled to his feet, dropping his bright plastic toy shovel, and ran towards Mark, arms outstretched in joyful abandon. Mark's legs moved as if in a dream, detached from his conscious will, his heart bursting with a joy so profound it was almost unbearable, a physical ache behind his ribs, tears welling in his eyes, blurring his vision. He knelt, the sand cool against his knees, catching Finn in a tight, desperate embrace, burying his face in his son's soft, sun-warmed hair, inhaling the sweet, innocent scent of childhood, a scent he thought he had forgotten, but that flooded back with overwhelming force. Voice choked with emotion, tears streaming down his face. Finn, you're here. Tears of joy, tears of disbelief, tears of a hope he hadn't dared to dream of, hot on his face. Pulling back slightly, a touch of confusion in his voice. Of course, I'm here, Dad. Where else would I be? The air was thick now, not with brine, but with the sharp, artificial scent of sunscreen and the warm, comforting smell of hot sand. The swing set was still there, but 26 different. Both swings motionless, newer, the wood brighter, the chains gleaming. But the colors, they were different too. Softer, somehow, muted, less harsh, and the light strangely sharper, almost blindingly bright, as if the sun itself had intensified. He felt a tremor of disorientation, a dizzying lurch in his stomach, a wave of nausea rising in his throat, sound of clear, bright children. Then laughter. High, clear, utterly, impossibly laughter. Laughter becomes more distinct. He looked down at his hands. They were different. Younger. No, not younger exactly, but less worn, the lines fainter, a familiar scar on his wrist, gone. Sound of David approaching. David approached, a concerned frown etching lines on his younger face. Voice younger, lighter, but still with a hint of worry. "Mark, are you all right? You look pale, like you've seen a ghost." "David, we need to leave. Now, we shouldn't be here. It's not safe." Frowning, concern deepening. "Mark, what are you talking about? We just got here. Finn's having fun. Look at him, he's happy." "No, David, listen to me. The road, the curves, it's going to be dangerous later on the way back. We need to go back to the house, now before it's too late." He pulled Finn closer, his grip almost desperate, a primal need to protect surging through him. David hesitated, his eyes searching Mark's face, reading the raw terror, the desperate urgency in his expression. The raw emotion in Mark's voice, the unshed tears glistening in his eyes, gave him pause. He saw not just fear, but a profound, unsettling conviction. Okay, Mark, okay. We'll go back to the house. It's getting late anyway." Relief flooded Mark, so potent it almost buckled his knees, weakening his limbs. He had done it. He had changed the past. He had saved Finn. And now he would save David too. Sound of footsteps in sand, walking away from the beach, distant beach sounds fading. They walked back to the house, Mark's arm wrapped protectively around Finn's small shoulders, holding him close, as if afraid he might vanish if he let go. He kept glancing back at the ocean, at the now distant, treacherous rocks, a knot of anxiety still twisting in his gut, a residue of the past grief. But Finn was safe. He was here, walking beside him, his small hand warm in Mark's. As they reached the weathered deck of the beach house, the familiar shimmer returned. Stronger this time, more intense, accompanied by a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the wooden planks beneath their feet. But the world was different. Again. He was back on the deck of the beach house, the weathered wood rough and familiar beneath his feet. The sun was setting, painting the sky with the same fiery hues of orange and blood red. The swing set stood silent, one swing creaking gently in the breeze, the other still empty, a stark reminder of absence. But something was different. The air felt heavier, laden with unspoken grief. The silence, deeper, more profound than before, and the guilt, the ever-present, gnawing guilt, was now laced with something else, a profound bone-deep weariness, an exhaustion that settled deep within his bones. David emerged from the house, 2 mugs in hand, walking with the same familiar limp, the same sorrow etched onto his face, the lines around his eyes deeper, more pronounced now. He handed Mark a mug, the familiar warmth offering a small comfort, their fingers brushing. Voice raspy, the same words as before, but now carrying a heavier weight of resignation. He would have been 28 today, but this time something in Mark shifted. The raw, agonizing edge of his grief was softened. Not gone, not by any means. The ache was still there, deep and persistent, but muted, as if a layer of gauze had been placed over the raw, gaping wound, dulling the sharpest pain. He looked at the empty swing. He still saw Finn, the memory of his bright smile, his infectious laughter, still echoed in his mind, a cherished phantom. But this time the image wasn't so vivid, so real. It was fainter, more like a cherished photograph, faded by time than a living, breathing presence. The vividness of the past encounter was already receding, blending into the tapestry of memory, blurring the lines between reality and illusion. He had tried to change the past. He had jumped headfirst into the treacherous tide of what-ifs, desperately seeking a reality where Finn was still alive, where the unbearable loss could be undone. And for a fleeting, glorious moment, he had found it. He had held Finn again, heard his laughter, felt the warmth of his embrace, a taste of stolen joy, a phantom limb of hope. But the tide of what-ifs was a treacherous one, he realized, with a chilling certainty. It offered tantalizing glimpses of hope, seductive illusions of alternate realities, but it demanded a price. Each jump blurred the lines of reality. Each desperate attempt to rewrite the unchangeable past only deepened the ache of the present, leaving him more weary, more lost. He couldn't live in the what-ifs. He couldn't keep chasing ghosts, however real they might seem in the fleeting moments of temporal displacement. He had to accept the reality that was, however painful, however unbearable it seemed. He had to honor Finn's memory not by trying to undo the past, an impossible and ultimately destructive quest, but by living in the present, by cherishing the real memories, the authentic moments of joy and love they had shared, by allowing the sharp, agonizing grief to soften with time, not to consume him entirely, leaving only a hollow shell. He took a sip of the coffee, the bitter taste grounding him in the present moment, a stark contrast to the fleeting sweetness of the what-if world. He had to accept the reality that was, however painful, however unbearable it seemed. He had to honor Finn's memory not by trying to undo the past, an impossible and ultimately destructive quest, but by living in the present, by cherishing the real memories, the authentic moments of joy and love they had shared, by allowing the sharp, agonizing grief to soften with time, not to consume him entirely, leaving only a hollow shell. He took a sip of the coffee, the bitter taste grounding him in the present moment, a stark contrast to the fleeting sweetness of the what-if world. He looked at David, at the shared sorrow etched in the lines around his eyes, and for the first time in 20 years, he felt a flicker of something else alongside the grief. Not joy, not happiness, not even peace in its fullness, but a fragile seed of peace, a quiet acceptance beginning to take root in the barren landscape of his heart. The ocean still roared, the waves still crashed against the rocks, a constant rhythmic reminder of time's relentless passage. But tonight, the sound wasn't solely a reminder of loss, of the unforgiving power of the sea. It was also the sound of time moving forward, relentlessly, inevitably carrying them all with it towards an unknown future. And perhaps, just perhaps, within that relentless tide, there was also the possibility of healing, of finding a way to live alongside the grief, to carry Finn's memory not as a crushing burden, but as a quiet, enduring love, a silent companion on the long journey ahead. The empty swing still swayed, a silent testament to absence, but tonight, under the fading light of the sunset, it felt a little less empty, a little less desolate, a little less like a monument to utter loss, and a little more like a space waiting, not to be filled, but to be honored, to be remembered with a quiet, enduring love. He looked at David, at the shared sorrow etched in the lines around his eyes, and for the first time in 20 years he felt a flicker of something else alongside the grief. Not joy, not happiness, not even peace in its fullness, but a fragile seed of peace. The ocean still roared, the waves still crashed against the rocks, a constant, rhythmic reminder of time's relentless passage. But tonight the sound wasn't solely a reminder of loss. It was also the sound of time moving forward, relentlessly, inevitably, carrying them all with it towards an unknown future. And perhaps, just perhaps, within that relentless tide, there was also the possibility of healing, of finding a way to live alongside the grief, to carry Finn's memory not as a crushing burden, but as a quiet, enduring love, a silent companion on the long journey ahead. The empty swing still swayed, a silent testament to absence, but tonight, under the fading light of the sunset, it felt a little less empty, a little less desolate, a little less like a monument to utter loss, and a little more like a space waiting, not to be filled, but to be honored, to be remembered with a quiet, enduring love.
Salt air chill, 20 years gone by. Sunset bleeds in a mocking sky. Empty swings in a silent frame. One move slow, whispering Finn's name. Coffee steams, barley rye, shed silence in the fading light. Too deep for words laughter on the ocean wave. Oh, empty swing, a hollow beat, echoes of small, hurried feet. Waters crash like waves on stone, soul erodes year after year alone. Silver hair, a limping stride, mirror sorrow deep inside. Fingers brush a silent vow. 28 he would be now. Ocean churns, a white foam stain, rocks that stole a life in vain. Beauty lost to darkness deep, where young dreams forever sleep. Shimmering air, a hum so low, time unwinds, where do we go? Sunscreen scent and sand so bright, laughter rings in day's pure light. Younger hands, a face anew, is it real or just a dream come true? Oh, empty sweep, a hollow beat, echoes of small, hurried feet. Waters crash like waves on stone, soul erodes year after year alone. Feel a whisper on the breeze, blue eyes wide beneath the trees. Dad, he cries and runs to me, joy so fierce it sets me free. Embrace so tight, a broken cup, past rewrites, drink it up. Leave now, David, it's not safe. Memory flashes of that fatal wave. Shimmer returns, a louder sound, world waver spins around and round. Dread creeps in, a chilling fear, back to silence year after year. Oh, empty swing, a hollow beat, echoes of small, hurried feet. Waters crash like waves on stone, soul erodes year after year alone. Coffee warm, a new day starts, faint smile mending broken hearts. Ocean sighs, a softer tone, empty swing, a little less alone.